And it also speaks about alienation. I hope this song would have gone away, but it seems to just be coming back and coming back again. It's a song I call 1990. So from the ghettos of Trinidad to the ghettos of LA, the same story. Nuclear warhead, do I see it torn down? And there's an army in retreat. I see the old colonials of Europe now become united. And that word, perestroika, it fills the streets. I see the eagle sitting on the shoulder of the bear. Or maybe it's the other way around. Is this the calm before the hellfire? Or is our tomorrow really heaven bound? But 1990, the blood still flows in Bogota, and from Beirut to Johannesburg, the river don't stop. 1990, third world children still wander in their boats, in their jungles, in their deserts, until they dry. It is strange. The more we change, the more we rearrange. Everything just seems the same as we move into the next century. 1990, please make a liar of me. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, 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 yeah, yeah. There is a black man on the run through a lonely Beijing street. There he goes, my God, he's running again, this time through Brooklyn, Howard Beach, and there he runs again through the streets of Soweto and Bensonhurst. And I'm saying, Lord, so this story goes. And the ghostly man from the past, they call him Selma, Alabama, he just shrugs and says, deja vu, I suppose. 1990, will our children stand firm, or will they keep a running and a running and a running till the end of time? 1990, will hands of love ever reach out, or will they be there just to strengthen the crime? It is strange, the more we change, the more we rearrange. Everything just seems the same as we move into the next century. 1990, please make a liar care of me. Oh, oh, oh. Oh, oh, oh. Bam-ba-dee-dee-ding, bam-a-ding, bam-a-ding, bam-a-ding. Ba-da-bee-doo-ba-doo. LA's burning down. It reminds me of Harlem and what's in the 60s. Same problem, same country, and King is still the name. People shouting power, power to we the people, and equal rights and justice is still the game. I remember over 25 years ago, America stood up and said, this won't happen no more. Now you tell me, what have we become? Will the beast always defeat the beauty? Is this land just another house of the rising sun? 1990, will we see a tomorrow where our children will truly be free? 1990, is it joy, is it sorrow, as we move into the 21st century? I'm saying it is strange. The more we change, the more we rearrange, everything stays the same as we move into the next century. 1990, make a believer. You don't have to cheat to be a winner. You don't have to steal to get it done. You don't have to lie and call me brother. Sometimes I think I just about had enough. Another war begins in South Africa. Oh my God. Another night of shambles, guns and knives. And the reason why it's so easy to discover is them diamonds in the ground worth more than my life. People make me cry. Sometimes when I'm alone, people make me cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. Oh, been there. still don't understand. But you can't say for me that I am not curious. And it would make me happy when we all make a stand, yes. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. Sometimes I think I take my life too serious. Yes, there are many things I still don't understand. But you can't say for me that I am not curious. And it would make me happy when we all make a stand. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. I'll tell you why. Because you don't have to cheat to be a winner. No, no. You don't have to steal to get enough. You cannot take my life away and still call me brother. Sometimes I think I just about had enough. What? You take my home, you take my pride, you still want to use me. Oh, you're cutting my inside out like a knife. You cannot take it all away and still abuse me. It's them diamonds in the crown worth more than my life. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, it's them diamonds in the crown worth more than my life. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. People make me cry sometimes when I'm alone. How I cry. People make me sad. Some people in this world, they make me sad. Oh, I don't only down the day. Oh, my day, only down the door. Only down the door. Oh, my down the day. Only down the door. Oh, my day, only down the day. Only down the down. Oh, my down the day.
People make me sad. People make me sad. Happy New Year. We must as we must, say Happy New Year, happy 2026. When I die, put on my tombstone that I love the Caribbean. I love being Caribbean. I love being black. I love being black. I love being West Indian. I love being Guyanese. I love being Guyanese. Tell it to the mountains that I enjoyed all my identities. Suppress none. Sometimes people make me sad. Sometimes my country makes me sad. But we come back always, because the mission is to make this world a better place than we met it. So many of us have not had the good fortune to express ourselves in the public space. And so some of us, with the blessings of God and the ancestors, must shout louder than we would have normally shouted. David Michael Rudder, love that brother. The philosopher, poet, the philosopher king of Calypso, started tonight with 1990. 1990. Please make a liar of me. Rudder wrote that Calypso as we entered the 21st century. And predicted that the more things change, rearrange, everything remains the same. Waxing lyric. Now we know that one thing is inevitable, and that is change itself. And Rudder is arguing that despite the inevitability of change, for some sectors of the world and the society, everything remains the same. And he asks the world, please make a liar of me. Please make a liar of me. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. We have been gone for a little while. It's the festive season, Christmas and New Year and everything that comes with that. And we too must take a break to reflect, to reminisce, and to freshen for the new day and the new dawn of the new year. Many of us are lucky to be alive. So many others have lost their lives in 2025 in warfare. So many have lost their lives because of official neglect. Many have gone home through old age. Thank God some of us are left to tell the story of 2025 and to begin to witness the story of 2026. The more things change, rearrange, everything remains the same. Many of us happen to be Guyanese. I love being Guyanese. There's only one Guyana, not the one Guyana that comics speak about. There is only a single place called Guyana, carved and shaped by the collisions of history. Here we are on the northern tip of South America. Small in size, small population-wise, but very large in terms of our contribution to the world. A world that was not made for us, a world that was never made for us, a world that we have been forced to traverse, and a world that we are constantly talking to, talking for, and talking about. In 1945, at the end of the Second World War, the victors of the war met in a town in New Hampshire called Bretton Woods. And there they sat and very carefully chartered an order for the world, a new world order. A new world order. It was called the Bretton Woods Agreement or the Washington Consensus. And it determined that Europe and America shall not war among themselves anymore. They shall order the world in which they could shape the world. They created institutions to ensure that this new world order would prevail. A world order that was made by the victors of the Second World War for themselves. The Washington Consensus. A new world order that created new institutions. The League of Nations became the United Nations. The United Nations, a global body of countries around the world, but where the victors of the war, the victors of the Second World War, had the last say, veto powers. They created the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to control and regulate global finances. They created the World Bank initially to rebuild Europe. Europe was ravaged by war, and they created the World Bank to help to rebuild Europe. They created what would become the World Trade Organization to regulate and control world trade. They created mega armies, NATO and Warsaw Pact, regulation and control of the world by the victors of the Second World War was complete. There was no Jamaica, no Trinidad and Tobago, no St. Lucia, no Guyana. We were colonies. And so a world was created for others and not for us. By the struggles of our people, we force the colonizers to release their colonies. Independence came. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to independence as the West Indies Federation, unfortunately. But individually, our Caribbean got its independence. And we came into this world that was created in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. A hostile world. A world which did not need islands anymore because sugar was dying. Europeans had found other things to sweeten themselves. And the death of sugar meant that we, the Caribbean, were coming into a world empty-handed. We came into a world with no armies. All we had were our minds. We came into the world with no nuclear weapons, but we confronted a world that was dominated by nuclear weapons. We came into a world without mega armies, but we were confronted by mega armies. We came into the world as expanded plantations, post-plantations, where the plantation had shaped our oppression for 4 centuries. And today, at independence, the plantation was still there. Post-plantation societies in a hostile world that didn't need islands for sugar anymore. We tried to turn plantations into nations. We tried. We came into a world with populations that were not formally educated. One of the first things we did, not for the first time, was to try to educate our people formally. We did it at emancipation when we built schools and churches and created economies and government. Here we are, here we were, again, having to do the impossible. We sought, some may say wisely, some may say unwisely. We sought to raise our hands and to raise our voices and to proclaim our equal humanity. Brother Bob says we are what we are And that's the way it's going to be. We try to shape a new way in the midst of prevailing powers. Which didn't want independence for post-plantation societies. In some cases, as in Guyana, the consequences of colonial expedition meant that people from different parts of the world were forced to share spaces, to share a space like Guyana, where only one could govern. We experience ethnic and racial civil war in Guyana. We came into a world that was not made for us. We try to extend the logic of freedom beyond the mere existence. In 1953, the British landed troops in then British Guyana out of fear that British Guyana would be free. Enemies of freedom for those who were once enslaved, snuffed out the promise of freedom by landing troops in Georgetown. In 1983, in the midst of a brave effort by the people of Grenada to signal its intention to be its own boss, triggered the landing of troops in 1983 in St. George's. The whiplash of those who never loved freedom for others. When a doyen of the middle class, the old West Indian middle class, the brown man, the mulatto man, Michael Manley, dressed in the garb of Joshua, with a rod of correction, steered Jamaica in a direction where Jamaicans could say, free at last, free at last. He was beaten and bloodied, and eventually threw the towel in. Democratic socialism, no. Amidst all of this, the Cuban people stood firm in trying to build a new way and a new day. We lived in a world that was not created for us. By the time the walls that separated the Eastern victors from the Western victors was torn down, It was clear, crystal clear, that freedom, if you're small, would mean very little. For the next 30 years, we said we're into the era of globalization. Rex Nettleford said, globalization is a new designation for an old obscenity. The obscenity of control by the strong. And so today, here we are, closing the 2025 chapter and opening the 2026 chapter in the most dramatic way. It was not unexpected. We knew it was coming. It was not overt. Sorry, it was not covert. It was quite overt. We knew that this chapter was coming. It was rehearsed. And so, when the United States landed forces in Caracas, snatched that country's, Venezuela's president, away, as David Rudder said, there was nothing new about it. The more we change, rearrange, everything remains the same. Aristide was snatched from Port-au-Prince. Remember? Manuel Noriega was snatched from Panama. Remember? Nothing new. The more we change, rearrange, everything remains the same. 1823, the United States says to its European friends, this is our sphere of influence. You shall not tarry here. The Monroe Doctrine, which has been upgraded and updated so many times, but it's still the Monroe Doctrine, where might is right, strength is power, and power is right. Those of us who cut our teeth in politics in the 1970s, the 1960s, and the 1980s, many of us were steeped in the politics of anti-imperialism, the right of countries to exist without interference from other countries, the right of each country to resist the might of empire, the right of each country to independently exist without fear of being stampeded. We were and we are still anti-imperialists. But the cries of anti-imperialism from the left of the political center did not stop power from ultimately prevailing Rather ask in that song, must the beast always defeat the beauty? Must the beast always defeat the beauty? And so what happened in Venezuela was not surprising. Our anti-imperialism has matured. We have seen it. We have seen it so many times. Tongues are wagging today. Everyone is commenting on what happened to Maduro and what it means for the Caribbean, what it means for Guyana. Many are hoping that the Americans would land troops in Georgetown and snatch away some Maduro-like authoritarians in Guyana. "2026 has welcomed us. Where are we going? How do we explain? When they sat in New Hampshire, they sought to create a world that would insulate Europe from war. They created mega armies. Never again would European countries go to war. Never again. What ensued is that European countries intervened over and over in the countries, the new countries, those who were not at the table in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. That is the fact of our existence over the last 7 decades. What does this all mean? We saw the rehearsal. Trinidad and Tobago fell in line. No anti-imperialism there. The rest of the Caribbean called for the zone of peace. Small voices calling for a zone of peace in their neighborhood. Is anybody listening? Is anybody listening? Guyana, perhaps the most unfortunate of the lot, nestled next door to Venezuela, a hostile Venezuela making claim to 2/3 of Guyana's territory. Where does Guyana stand in all of this? It was clear that Venezuela would be the theater of what I am referring to as the New World Order. I think we are witnessing the unfolding of a new world order. We are making a transition from Bretton Woods, from the Washington Consensus, to a new world order. The three superpowers, Russia, China, the United States, and some minor superpowers, the BRICS group, Indian, South African, Israel, and it's a new world. And a new world order is unfolding before our very eyes. When Maduro was snatched by America, Russia did nothing. China did nothing. It's a new world order. It's back to the principles of 1823. This Western Hemisphere is in the United States backyard. And it's chasing China and Russia out. And the way these people make war is they do not go to each other. The Washington Consensus say they must not. Remember the Cold War? America and the Soviet Union never fired a shot at each other. Their proxies fought around the world, but they never fired a shot at each other. And they're never going to fire a shot at each other this time around. But clearly, they are shaping a new order where they will have to coexist even as they compete. Maduro and Venezuela are mere collateral damage. They're props. The Calypsonian Valentino, so life is a stage, and we are the actors. And Venezuela and Maduro are actors, minor actors. Venezuela is the theater. The theater. What is unfolding is bigger than Venezuela and Maduro. I am taking us tonight to a place that we have to go, because trapped in our internal politics of St. Lucia and St. Kitts and Guyana and so forth, we often miss the larger world. Our own Guyana. In 2020, we were told to put aside the results of an election and have a recount, because the results seem flawed. And we recounted. But in the end, the big man said, use the flawed result that prompted the recount, not the result of the recount. Guyana was collateral damage. The troops did not land in Guyana in 2020 and took away Mr. Granger. But the results were the same. The results were the same. Venezuela is mere collateral damage. This is about Venezuela, but it is also about more than Venezuela. And we have to take our politics there in order for us to understand what is happening around us. I am tired of being only an idealist. Idealism, yes. But I have lived long enough in the political world to know the limitations of idealism. The ideal world, often small nations like Guyana, we look out the window and we ask for the ideal world, the zone of peace. That's the ideal world. One of my favorite hymns in the Anglican hymnal, when comes the promised time, that war shall be no more, and lust, oppression, crime shall flee thy face before. We're always dreaming of the ideal world. I don't want to say tonight that we should stop dreaming. We are idealists and we must continue to be idealists, but we want to understand the limitations of idealism. The ideal world is only ideal when those with the power to keep it ideal decide to. When those with the power to disregard idealism decides to do so, idealism goes for a vacation. We in the Caribbean, we in Guyana, we do not have the capacity. Let me take that back, because maybe we do have the capacity. We don't have the capacity. We don't have the scope. We don't have the leverage to determine what happens in the world, what happens in our own countries. Let's get that straight. We vote every 5 years, and we say, oh, look what Win has done. And look how the APNU is destroyed. And the PPP has a landslide. And all of that has very little to do with us Guyanese. The shaping of a new world order. Remember 2020, I go back. Remember, there were two major political actors in that election. And one actor was sanctioned by Big Brother before the election was over. You know, you fight an election, the elections are over, you say, Maduro, you lose the election, but you declare yourself a winner. So we sanction you, as they did. In Guyana, they didn't wait for the election to be over. They said to one of the actors, you are the loser. And before the elections are declared, we will sanction you. The New World Order. Is anybody listening? Is anybody listening? The New World Order. And so what happened in Venezuela a couple of nights ago has to be seen within that large context. You know, there are tools of analysis. Those of us who were lucky enough to go to that thing they call university, we learned about tools of analysis. These are things that you use to analyze a situation. But there are also levels of analysis. You can make an analysis at this level, the national level. And at the national level, you talk about WIN and you talk about PNC and APNU and PPP. But you have to move to another level, because Guyana is part of a larger world. And you have to make an analysis at that level. And we have to understand how the forces are operating. Many of us are talking about Trump and the Trumpian style, and Donald Trump goes in and he himself say, you know, he personalizes what happens there. But what happened there is not a personal Trumpian thing. What happened in Venezuela is a larger global systemic effort to signal to the rest of the world that this is how it's going to be. The American military was behind Trump. They're going to debate in the Congress of the United States, and they will have different views. So many American Congress people are saying that the government was wrong. The government violated international law, and it should have gone to Congress because the War Powers Act gives Congress the power to declare war. And as Rubio said, this was not a declaration of war. This was a national security operation. You know, the president is always, in the New World Order, declared war, not as war, but as foreign policy. I know this one here, now they're calling it national security. It's the same thing, same war, you know, different words. But when the debate is over, the deed is already done. And it is clear that there is going to be a new way to conduct international relations. Sovereignty, as we know it, will remain. I hear so many people are saying, what does sovereignty mean? Well, if you're from the Caribbean, from Guyana, what's sovereignty? What's sovereignty? We got our independence and we tried to turn plantations into nations, and the global order said there is no place for post-plantation independent economics. You can cry loudly about your democratic socialism or your cooperative socialism. At the end of the day, you have neither the capacity nor the leverage to decide for yourself what you will be. Certainly not in economics and in politics. A new world order is unfolding before our very eyes. And we small countries are on the periphery of that order. On the periphery of that order. Guyana has oil, about 30 billion barrels. That's a lot for a little country like Guyana. And one would think that with oil comes leverage. Maybe in the case of Saudi Arabia, oil brings leverage. Maybe in the case of Iran, oil brings leverage. Not in Guyana. Guyana is as weak as it has always been on the international scene. The coming of oil to Guyana does not give Guyana the leverage that petrostates have. Venezuela used to be a hemispheric hegemon. Flexed its muscles because it had oil, large army. Beat up on Guyana. Today, it is brought to its knees. It's no longer the regional hemispheric hegemon that it used to be. America is saying to us, the Western Hemisphere is in our pocket. It used to be in our backyard. We bring you out of the bed, we put you in our pocket. And we shall determine what happened inside your country and outside your country. I think that Donald Rumsfeld used to talk about the known knowns and the known unknowns. Well, the known known is that America is the greatest and most powerful country in the Western Hemisphere and perhaps in the world. And it can break, and it does break, any law it wants to. Nothing is new about that. Nothing is new. No United Nations, no international court will stop a powerful country from doing what the United States is doing right now. Am I saying this to say, let's throw our hands up and just bow down? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about what is known, a known fact. Guyana has 30 barrels of oil. It got 5,000 people in an army. Guyana got 30 billion barrels of oil. 58% of its people are in poverty. Nothing changes. Nothing changes. Guyana has no leverage. Not hemispherically, not regionally. What does Guyana do? Our government has not taken a stand on what has happened in Venezuela. It put out a statement. I don't know what that statement is. It's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment. I'm clear in my mind that Guyana and the other countries in the English-speaking Caribbean must take a neutral position on these big global issues. And by neutral, what I mean, we must come down on neither side. We must not come down on one side or the other. It is our business, but it's also not our business. And it is not our business because we can do nothing to influence it. And so I am arguing that Guyana should take a neutral position here. Venezuela has been a bad boy to Guyana. Very bad boy. Maduro has been terrible to Guyana. The United States has intervened in Guyana. When the British landed troops in 1953, it was at the origin of the United States. The United States has influenced regime change in 1964. In 1992, in 2020. So we know in Guyana about what the United States can do. Venezuela is making universal claims to Guyana's land. And by universal, I mean all of them. Government, opposition, Maduro, Machado, all of them. All of them. If we celebrate regime change, from Maduro to Machado, Machado is more hawkish on Guyana's territory than Maduro. Jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Keep our mouth out of that regime change nonsense if we're Guyana. Regime change in Venezuela does not help Guyana. Now, as a small nation, some may argue we do not have interest. Because if you don't have leverage, you don't have influence, then you don't necessarily have interest. The United States got economic interest and is pursuing its economic interest in Venezuela. They're going to control the oil, they say. They make it very clear. Very clear, very clear. They have economic interest there. We do not have economic interest in Venezuela. We do not have political interest in Venezuela. Keep our blasted mouths out of that thing. Our interest in Venezuela has to do with our territory. That is what should guide our stance on Venezuela. They came to our territory. And the spillover of war to Guyana, we are already seeing the confusion in our country with Venezuelans who have fled here and Colombians and Brazilians. Imagine another 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 Venezuelans coming over to our border. That is our interest. So our interest is the level of migration from war and destabilization. And with that migration, coming here, saboteurs. And I said our other interest is the territorial claim to our land. Those are the two things that ought to guide us. I wish that we can go on a soapbox and say how bad regime change is. Of course regime change is bad. But that's not Guyana's interest. Regime change in Venezuela does not affect Guyana positively. So take our mouth out of that regime change thing. Regime change is bad, meaning by regime change, the power of a big country to go in a small country, take away its leader, and determine who governs tomorrow. That's wrong. That's morally wrong, politically wrong. But I'm saying, as a nation, that's not Guyana's interest. Individuals like my friend Ramotar, Donald, and others who are anti-imperialists, that's their thing. But as the government of our country, we have no business in that debate on regime change. What is happening there? We must ask, in Guyana, how is it going to affect in a positive way the territorial thing? And it does not. It does not. But if must we have those interests in what's happening in Venezuela, we don't have the influence to determine what goes on there and what the outcomes are. We don't have the leverage. We are not at the table. We are not at the table. And that is why I'm arguing that Guyana should take a neutral position. Shouldn't support the Venezuela side or the American side. But neutrality must not mean that we just shut up and allow the wind to blow us anywhere. We must stand for something as a nation. We must talk to America so that it conducts its foreign policy in a way that does not overtly hurt Guyana. You know, during the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, that was the closest the Americans and the Soviets came to war, when missiles were discovered in Cuba, and the American government was urged by the generals to bomb the hell out of Cuba. In the end, they didn't have to. The Soviets removed the missiles, and the Americans had some missiles, I think, in Turkey, and they removed them. Years later, at a conference, Fidel Castro was asked if he would have turned the switch on the missiles that were pointed at America, and he said yes. The Venezuelans, under duress and the manners in by the United States, could turn their weapons on Guyana. Guyana is not going to be able to defend itself. And so it is not in Guyana's interest to antagonize Venezuela. It is not in Guyana's interest to antagonize America. Exxon controls our oil. If America is out of the equation, Venezuela will walk into Guyana tomorrow. America is the hegemon. They don't come to hegemons in this part of the world. The Chinese are here. The Russians are here in parts of Latin America, but not as counter-hegemons. I think what Venezuela has shown is that clearly they have ceded this Western hemisphere to America. So it is not in Guyana's interest to antagonize the United States of America. I am not saying that there should not be condemnation, human rights condemnation. There must be. There should be condemnation for violation of international law, yes. But in terms of our larger stance, our larger posture, we must antagonize neither the Venezuelans nor the Americans. And that's what I mean by taking a neutral position. I read the statement by the president, and if you read the statement carefully, it is a statement that at best seemed to be egging on the Americans, not in an overt way. Oh, we praise President Trump for his commitment to democracy and all of that, buttering up the Americans. And you try to butter up the Americans today, and tomorrow the Venezuelans decide to let loose some bazookas, another thing on us. Clearly, the Americans are our friends. Clearly, that is clear. Where we find ourselves as a nation, the Americans have to be have to be our friends. But America is not going to confine its foreign policy to its friendship with Guyana. America's friendship with Guyana is low down on the priorities of American interests. Let's get that very clear. And so, yes, America is our friend. But America could abandon us tomorrow if its interest is not served by that friendship. That's how big countries conduct foreign policy. And we have to get wise. This is not the 1960s and 70s when we were guided by an ideological, position against imperialism and etc., etc. And, when big countries fighting each other, we take one side over the other. We have to be very careful in this situation. We cannot antagonize the Americans because if they are removed from the equation, we're dead. We should not antagonize the Venezuelans because they could decide to lob some bombs across the border to us. They can pack up a set of mercenaries and send them over here as migrants. We are vulnerable. We are vulnerable. And so we must take a neutral position. But that neutrality must be grounded in principle. It mustn't be a neutrality that is opportunistic. It must be grounded in principle. In the ideal world, this is what we stand for. We come out of the nigger yard of yesterday, and we cannot stand for nigger yard politics. In the ideal world, but real politics demands that we take a neutral position. We are for human rights. Must always be for human rights. But in this conflict, our interest is not guided by human rights. In other words, this government has to lay out a foreign policy direction for Guyana. What is our foreign policy? What is this grounded on? Under Burnham, we had a foreign policy of non-alignment. Clear. Grounded on the fact that small nations have to keep out of big people's story and have to protect their own interests as small nations. Non-alignment. Aligned with neither the North nor the South, neither East nor West, sorry. It was a clear policy of non-alignment that informed our foreign policy. Anti-imperialism informed our foreign policy in the 60s and 70s and the 80s. Anti-apartheid defined our foreign policy. So our foreign policy was determined by non-alignment, anti-imperialism, anti-racism. That is why Michael Manley and Fox Burnham were loud voices for a new world economic order, a new world information order. We have moved on from then. And we have to craft a new foreign policy in this new world order. And when I look at that limp statement by the government, I'm not encouraged. It does not betray an understanding of the global imperatives. It does not betray an understanding of what is unfolding before us. Our neutralism, the neutralism that I am calling on our government to adopt, is a nuanced neutralism, one that is guided by protection of our economic and territorial interests, our proximity geographically to the theater of war. It's a nuanced neutralism. Because we are caught in between and betwixt. No. In times of war, and Guyana, although it is not directly involved, our geographical proximity, the little oil that we get in 30 barrels of oil, our territorial integrity, when you put all of that together, it's as if we are at war, a cold war. How are we going to survive? At the Second World War, Churchill called in Attlee and they form a war government. Guyana cannot negotiate what is happening. I say what is happening because the capture of Maduro is not the end of the story. And Venezuela is not going to be the only country in this Western Hemisphere that is going to feel the wrath of the United States. This is the beginning of a new order. What is Guyana's stance? I'm arguing for a nuanced neutralism. I'm arguing for a statement of principle, our continued commitment to the zone of peace, our continued commitment to a place for small countries where they can be sheltered from the ravages of the foreign policy of a big country. Must be grounded in the notion of self-determination for countries. Must be grounded in a synthesis of foreign policy imperative and domestic imperative. What do I mean? You can't call for democracy internationally. You can't call for no regime change internationally. And you're engaged in regime change in your own damn country. The PPP is the benefactor of regime change. And so, if it says we respect the right of dictators to exist, then that has something to do with what's happening in your own country. It's not my business whether Maduro is a dictator. That's not my business. That's the business of the people in Venezuela. I deal with my dictator here at home. So whether Maduro is removed because he's a dictator, don't bother me. That don't bother me. I'm concerned about my dictators at home. And I would rather remove my dictators at home myself, meaning we Guyanese. So there's some issues, not. But that limp statement by the government doesn't offer encouragement to Guyanese. And we are in a precarious position. We are vulnerable. And this government must move from a foreign policy by a party to a foreign policy by a government. Sorry, foreign policy by a party to foreign policy by a nation. This business is not about a government. In Guyana, government and party is the same thing. We now have to talk about the foreign policy of a nation. That is, we must have a national approach to foreign policy. This is not about the government. The government is made up of one party. This is about the nation. When bullets and bombs are going to come over from Venezuela, God forbid, it won't got PPP and PNC and WPA and WIN mark on it, and AFC mark on it. Our government must get off its rear and realize that the nation is threatened. And when the nation is threatened, the nation must respond. If half the nation doesn't trust this government to govern them, are they going to trust the government to defend their interests as a nation? No. We need a national approach. A national approach. What a national approach does is that it brings ideas together in one place. We don't have a big army. We don't have nuclear weapons. We don't have big set of conventional weapons. And in international relations and foreign policy, when you don't have those things, the next best thing is your ideas. Your ideas. Your ideas now have to become weapons of protection. It's your ideas that's going to determine how you navigate this nuanced situation. And we have to navigate it. This is not about whether you like America or not. We don't need to antagonize America. Whether you like America or not, that's your personal politics. It may even be your party politics. But we cannot antagonize the Americans. We cannot antagonize Maduro. It's not whether Maduro is a dictator or not. That's your personal business, that's your party business. If you don't like dictators. You may like Maduro and the Venezuelans for what they did with their oil, the Petro-Caribbean, in helping the English-speaking Caribbean with cheap oil. But as Guyanese, They didn't help we with cheap and they want me land. That is a known. So it's not whether you like Venezuelan government, Maduro, whoever. The fact of the matter is that if we go out of our way to antagonize the Venezuelans in a fit of revenge for what the Americans are doing to them, they could harm us. Delicate situation. And it mustn't be guided by emotions. Emotions are a good thing, eh? The world will not be the world without emotions. So I'm not anti-emotion, but I'm saying emotions alone. We cannot antagonize either of those two actors because both actors have the capacity to blow us away in a minute. And the assumption that the Americans are at Venezuela's throat does not necessarily mean that if the Venezuelans try to harm us, the Americans will necessarily come to our rescue. The Russians love Maduro. They didn't come to his rescue the other night. You see, what the Americans have done is something that is sending foreign policy specialists in a tizzy. They've removed Maduro, but they didn't remove his government. The vice president is now the president, but she has been told, step in line. So it's not the classic regime change. It's not the classic regime change. Eventually, the Americans will engineer the Machado lady. They will say you have to hold elections. And we know they will bend up the elections. And the lady going to eventually get into power, the opposition lady. That's my prediction. But it is not just straight regime change where the government is toppled. They've weakened the government and they've brought the government in line. Guyana is in a precarious position, and all its minds and experts on international economics, international politics, international relations must be brought to bear on this issue. And we must carve a foreign policy. We have not had a foreign policy direction since the Burnham foreign policy era. As I said, it was based on non-alignment, anti-imperialism, anti-global racism, and regional integration. The 4 planks of the Burnham foreign policy. And it was a foreign policy that was shared by many newly independent countries. Pursuit of global equitability in economics, in information, in politics. It was a comprehensive foreign policy. Since those days, we have not had a coherent foreign policy direction. Because we could have argued that we were not players, and we still are not players. But we are in the neighborhood. So we may not be a player in what's happening, but we are affected by it, and we must have a policy to it. Some may ask, well, what is the difference between non-alignment and the neutralism you're talking about, Dr. Hines? There may be some similarities. Let's start there. lots of similarities between the non-alignment. Non-alignment, so you're aligning with neither north, with neither east nor west. In terms of this neutrality, there is alignment. There is some alignment with the Americans. So it's not a non-alignment, it's a neutrality in which there is some alignment. We are aligning with the Americans. They're extracting our oil. They are going to be our big protector, potentially, if the Venezuelans decide to go crazy. So there is alignment here. So this neutrality does have some alignment there. There's a big difference between the neutrality that I'm arguing for and non-alignment. And I'm saying, despite the alignment with the Americans, we should still be neutral. And I think the Caribbean countries, St. Vincent and St. Lucia and Dominica, and those who benefited from Petro-Caribbean, didn't get that right. Ralph and them did not get it right. That you could be grateful to Maduro and Venezuela for giving you cheap oil, but when it comes to your sister's territory in Guyana, oh no. Oh no. So the neutrality that I'm talking about is a nuanced approach. You antagonize none of the players because you could be harmed economically, politically, militarily by both. Guyana has to survive. I'm calling not for a government approach. I'm calling for a national approach. Two different things. You could have a government that is not necessarily national in nature. And our government in Guyana is not national in nature. It's a partisan government. And to get a national approach, you have to bring the various parts of the puzzle to the table. So we must have a national approach, not a government approach. A national approach. Ultimately, if you bring together the opposition parties and the government to carve out a sensible foreign policy, ultimately it is the government of the day that will have to carry out the foreign policy. So it's not taking over the government function, but it's giving leadership to the nation on the matter. We do not know what will happen tomorrow. We do not know what will happen next week. Venezuelans could come pouring over the border. That is an issue in itself that we have to deal with. I don't know that our country, sociologically, politically, can deal with that. Economically, we may be able to, because we got oil money. And we could be able to deal with the economic needs and the economic imperatives of mass migration from Venezuela. But politically, we won't think, are they going to be voting? Who they're going to be voting for? How they will affect elections? So politically, we don't have a policy to migration. Sociologically, when you put ethnic groups together in one place, especially the immigrant populations are coming, it's going to be the natives versus the immigrants, fraught with danger. And we have not worked out a migration policy. How to deal with mass migration. And this is not migration that is willing migration. A lot of the migration is forced. People are coming from Venezuela fleeing hardship. Forced migration is different from voluntary migration. These are things that we have to work out. What is our policy? We have none. You open the Chronicle today, it's as if Venezuela didn't happen. It didn't happen just next door. And all kind of stupidness in the people. Freddie Kissoon, in his column, dealt with Maduro, but he had to put in Burnham and Castro. Other than that, you open the government newspaper. The newspaper the government runs on behalf of Guyanese people. And no discussion of what happened in Venezuela. If that is informed by the fact that the government doesn't want to offend Venezuela, doesn't want to offend Americans, I am with you on that because that's where I stand. But if it is driven by just self-preservation, meaning the preservation of the government and the party, a part company with you there, you have to say something. You have to give leadership. You have to say something. There are big issues at play. Where do you stand on human rights? Where do you stand on self-determination? Where do you stand on the Monroe Doctrine updated? Here is where we stand. But here is our policy in spite of where we stand. You see, you have to be nuanced. You don't get head just to wake up. But to sit and say nothing is embarrassing. This is not the Guyana of Forbes Burnham, who was a colossal in status international relations. This is not the Guyana of Walter Rodney, who was a colossal in academic and intellectual international relations. This is not the Guyana of Rashleigh Jackson, one of the early shapers of Guyana's foreign policy and an actor in implementing foreign policy. This is not the Guyana of Ayusi Kwayana, who was the author of Guyana's foreign policy towards Africa. The pioneer. The Burnham government carried out the policy, but it was Kwayana who influenced the origins of that policy. This is not the Guyana of Clive Thomas, who's a pioneer in regional integration, foreign policy. We have played important roles in shaping foreign policy and international relations thought and practice, or some may say praxis. And we have a government in which things are unfolding before our very eyes. And it is not even encouraging analysis, introspection, of what is going on. Shut its mouth. Neutrality does not mean Muslim. Neutrality does not mean Muslim. Doesn't mean you Muslim yourself. What it means is that your policy is guided by your interest. And the policy that comes out of your interest must not violate the fundamental principles on which you stand. The zone of peace must remain. It may be hollow because it doesn't prevent America from doing anything. But as a principle that guides our world outlook, the Caribbean as a zone of peace. We are safer in the Caribbean when there is no war. We are safer in the Caribbean when there is no war on our doorsteps, the zone of peace. All we have ultimately are our voices. And we must use them sensibly. Sensibly. So, sisters and brothers, it's been one of those nights tonight. And like I said, this matter is unfolding. And we in Guyana cannot pretend that it doesn't exist. And the government is pretending that we don't have a problem on our hands. We have a problem on our hands. Of course, some people, like I said at the beginning of the show, want the Americans to land some troops and carry away Irfan and Jack Dew and them. Some say they want to land some troops and carry away Azzedine. You know, Guyanese are Guyanese. We find ways and means of making light of some heavy things, but also guided by our own authoritarian government at home. And so we are saying to the Americans, if you really want to get rid of authoritarians and perceived drug dealers and drug pushers, you get them here in Guyana, come for them. That's the West Indian turn in our politics. But at the end of the day, it is much more serious than that. It is much more serious than that. And we have to work it through. I'm going to try to see if I get some of the foreign policy, international relations experts to come on to enrich our discussion. But that's where I stand at the moment. That's where I stand at the moment. We cannot be muzzled, but we should not be shrill in our pronouncements. Somewhere between hollering and saying nothing. We have a nation. You can't tell our interest is to protect the nation. With your mouth, just to protect the nation, you must give the nation hope. You must give the nation a sense that you know what's going on. You're on top of things. Yes, we don't have to stop our country and everything else that's happening in our country because the Americans snatch Maduro. We don't have to. But we cannot ignore it as a trivial thing or that it doesn't exist. In case you're joining us late, Happy New Year. 2026 has started gingerly from a political standpoint. And we shall see. We shall see. I'll see you all tomorrow night, when I'm sure we will continue this discussion. I hope that we have offered some clarity. I hope that we have offered a new perspective to the discussion that's happening around us. And I hope that our government will act mature. It has an opportunity. Nobody wants to usurp their power. But we're saying, when you are faced with the kind of situation that we are faced with, and our vulnerability, you have to reach for something beyond your narrow confines. We will survive. I hope we do. We shall survive. I hope we do. Because ultimately, the big powers are going to survive, because that's what they are working out. Their own survival. Their own survival. And we, the people, are depending on our government to lead the way, because they are the government. I shall see you all tomorrow night.